Welcome back to The Assignment, part 2 of our episode on news addiction or aversion. If you haven't listened to episode 1, you can find it on your podcast app.
Please be reminded that this podcast deals with mature topics and is intended for an adult audience. Additionally, we sometimes discuss graphic and disturbing content, which may prove distressing for some listeners, in addition to our hosts.
So what question are we on now?
We are on question 5. So question 5 is, news is entertainment. What is the emotional response that you get from the news, and why do you keep going back for more?
My emotional response is certainly dependent on the context. So that's number 1. And I can easily become absorbed in natural disasters with an almost obsessive sense of awe and intrigue. And it's like there's something really morbidly reassuring to me when the planet just says, fuck you. It's like, here, have a terrifying sinkhole, landslide, wildfire, tsunami. And it reminds me how small I am. And strangely, that's kind of comforting. I guess what I'm getting at is that visually, I think destruction is kind of beautiful. So I know it sounds crass, but you think about these images that we see in the news, whether it's, that wildfire in Fort Mac that we were all watching, or of course the tsunami on Boxing Day. Mm-hmm. Those images are so burned into your memory that from there, they can often take on an entirely different form in some way. So you'll hear me talk a great deal about my fear of most things. When I was a child, one of those things were tornadoes. And I thank Wizard of Oz for that solely. Exactly. Now, concurrently, I was sick in my youth with recurrent bouts of pneumonia, and it prompted this reoccurring fever dream that I had. And I would have this same dream. Oh, I bet you over the course of about 5 years, I probably had it, 60 times, and it never changed. So in this dream, I'm picking flowers on this beautiful hill, reminiscent of Sound of Music, probably. I'm sure that's where that image came from in my mind. So, I'm wearing this beautiful little flowing dress, picking flowers on a hill, and all of a sudden, this huge clay hand comes out of the sky, and everything starts getting dark. These angry clouds roll in, and this hand just begins to take up the entirety of my field of vision. And so as this hand out of the heavens is getting closer and closer to me, and the sky is getting darker and darker, you can almost feel it. It's oppressive. Like if I think about it right now, I can feel what that felt like. Sort of like you're drowning, but my fingers would feel like dough. Like if I would press my thumb and my forefinger together, it was like I was pressing somebody else's hand. It was this really sort of otherworldly, kind of out-of-body feeling. So here I am on this hill, it's getting darker, this hand's coming towards me, and then all of a sudden, like a flash, these black and gray and white swirling lines, like a tornado, like I'm inside the tornado, or I am the tornado, I don't know. So then I wake up, drenched in sweat, clenched throat, trying to scream, can't make a sound, that feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like that dream, that image informed so many drawings or paintings and stories in my mind as I grew up. And as much as it was frightening, the imagery removed from that emotional response was kind of stark and beautiful and almost comforting in the same sense. So sometimes I can look at these natural events in our world and the aftermath as the earth simply doing what it does, like creating something new and magnificent, rather, out of something chaotic and violent. So, picture magma exploding from an underwater volcano, or an avalanche sort of gracefully cascading down a mountainside, like you could almost float on its surface. So that's what I mean by...
almost like a feeling of surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And if I fall down that rabbit hole a little further, it's far less gratifying because it is not lost on me that we as humans are totally the scourge of the planet.
Yes.
And we have directly influenced the severity of many of these natural disasters. So on the flip side, my emotional response to news stories involving things like war, famine, and abuse is in stark contrast. There is no beauty in those things, and it kind of elicits this real hatred of mankind for me. I like to think that we're predominantly good. We are not.
Well, it depends. I mean, if you watch the news, we're not. But if you spend your time dealing with actual reality and the people around you, I think you could get away with having the feeling that we are better than we seem.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I really hope that's the case. But definitely those kind of headlines just increase my anxiety and make me feel pretty hopeless in general. And anything that really speeds up that doomsday clock for me is something I actively try to avoid if I want to contribute something positive, which I honestly think deep down I do. So that's it. That's my emotional response. I'm either intrigued or horrified. There's no in between.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting. That's an interesting dichotomy. Like if there's nothing to be blamed, so a natural disaster,
Right.
then you can find beauty in it. But if there is an element of people had a choice and they chose to do the shitty thing, then that's when you find it off-putting.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, I don't blame you, honestly. I find myself watching the news for the exact reason that you don't watch it, is that when people are shitty, I find that real engaging and interesting. Scandals have always been something that I've found attractive. And I think I get that from my mother, that when somebody does something that is terrible and not something I would ever do, I find it fascinating. And for me, I think a lot of us had boomer parents that became completely addicted to CNN during the first Trump presidency. I know my parents did. And they were absolutely astonished with how crazy things got. I think since that time, things have seemed to get crazier and crazier and crazier. And it seems like now we live in, an absolute strange timeline where I would never have believed the way that the world is now if you had told me 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember when Trump was president the first time, every time I got a call from my stepfather, the first thing out of his mouth was, "Did you see what that fucking idiot did now?" Like every single time without fail. And as much as they were so put off by who he was and what he was doing, they couldn't look away. I think that's what it is. The crazier things are, the more we become addicted to watching them. It's like rubbernecking a car accident, to be honest. We're just attached and attracted to chaos in that way, or some of us are. Honestly, and we're going to talk about it later, but this is not a popular opinion, but when COVID happened, I was like, "Ooh, what's this? What's this world chaos? Like, hello, lovely." I could not look away. And I was so engaged with how bad's it going to get. And we'll kind of go into that later. But I mean, I digress a little bit. Like if you think about my favorite person, Trump, if anything, he's an entertainer, right? He understands that part of the human being that is engaging with the news today. The 24-hour news stations, they need to be breathless in their disdain of him in order for him to be all that they talk about. And that's how he gained the power that he did, is because he understood that regardless of what they're saying, if they're talking about him nonstop, that benefits him. If we didn't react like that to the news, then we would all spend 20 minutes every day reading routers and get the fuck on with our day. And that's what we do. And I hear lots of people that, especially when you talk about people in that are Americans, losing a parent to right-wing news media, to the conspiracy rabbit holes espoused by, Fox News or Newsmax or OAN or all those things. And they find it hard to even be around their MAGA parent because of how much they're just spewing expletives about the deep state and, all these crazy conspiracy theories. It might as well just go to a Trump rally. So it has become very polarized. I think people are really barricaded almost on their side and defensive about where they've landed politically, which has made it really, really impossible for people to have open discourse about these things.
Well, they're certainly precious about it.
Yeah.
I think we might have talked about it in another question, but it's that emotional tie. That's strong.
Right. Well, and engagement has to live on the kernel of emotion. If you're not emotional, you're not engaging, right? And so clickbait, algorithms, they're all looking to enact some sort of emotional response from you. So, if you are emotionally responding to the news, that's something you are a product as much as you are a viewer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're a commodity. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And, if I'm honest, I do watch the news to be entertained by it. I get a kick out of the swirling chaos of our time. And the more that I know, the more that I want to know. U.S. politics is something that I'm, of course, super engaged with just because it's so nuts and I just can't look away. But, I think I'm always looking at what does this mean in a larger context? U.S. politics is important because they are a world superpower. They are the world hegemony. So there are big implications, especially for our country, Canada. You can see it right now of what happens in the U.S. affects us hugely, as much as if it was happening here. Well, Trump just called Trudeau a great governor of the 51st state the other day. So just
his timing's impeccable.
Pointing that out. Elon Musk also called Trudeau an insufferable tool. Yeah, which was so awesome.
Not pulling punches.
Okay, so for me, I also look cynically at the world because I was a university student and I took international development. And so I became cynical about, world superpowers and hegemony because I learned that rich nations are typically bad actors, campaigning as altruistic bringers of peace. When you look about bringing democracy to the world, is that really what they're doing? Is that really what U.S. foreign policy is doing? Or are instead they raping poor countries for their exports, locking them into debt traps they'll never conceivably get out of, and placing puppet politicians at their helms who will be obedient to their masters while being placated by shiny things?
Yeah, I'm going to choose B.
It's B. Yeah. It's definitely B. Empire nations have been behaving like this for centuries. The U.S. didn't invent it. They just happen to be the one that is in power right now. So maybe there's a comfort in the fact that this is just the way human power manifests itself on a world stage. But the hypocrisy of it tantalizes me, saying that they're doing one thing, we're bringing democracy to that nation, and then A, not doing it, and B, ending up in some sort of 20-year war, where they're occupying that place and leaving it worse off than they found it. I love that shit. I don't know why. It's just it's so wrong, it's right. Even the politicians in the U.S., this is what gets me. So they tell all these long stump speeches about how they're servants of the public trust. And there's entire websites dedicated to their stock portfolios of how much money they make and giving us lowly serfs insights into what stocks to buy. Is that not insane? Follow these totally corrupt politicians' moves in the stock market, which are entirely informed by their own regulatory powers over the corporations that provide them with donations.
As long as you're being transparent about it.
As long as you're being transparent. Nancy Pelosi's portfolio is currently worth an estimated $250 million. $250 million. Does that seem reasonable, Anna?
No, and I can't even make sense of that kind of money.
No.
Yeah.
Well, because it's unreasonable.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. That's what it is. And it's the ridiculousness of this late stage capitalism and the total lie of it, that it benefits anybody but the people at the very top, that should
This is absolute entertainment to you.
That is my entertainment. That is what gets me. That's what gets me coming back for more.
I have to say, I do enjoy it. We vacation together and we'd get up and go for a swim in the morning, and you would give me the update from the day before, but just how much closer we are to annihilation than we were yesterday.
That's right.
And I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed having it spoon-fed to me. I didn't want to do the digging myself.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I'll dig for anyone. I mean, honestly, I love it. And I love telling people about the news because I am somebody who is prone to expressing myself with hyperbole. With the I like the shock factor. That's what gets me. And when I imagine the future of humanity, honestly, it doesn't look like our world does today. Because in my mind, there's no way that our current situation is sustainable. I think that's why I talk about the apocalypse so often.
Because you're wishing for it?
Yeah, sort of. Because people won't continue to buy into a system that no longer benefits them. That's where my adrenaline starts to race. Like, what's going to happen? When is the revolution? Will I get an invitation? And if the world suddenly changed entirely and we no longer had to endure things like 40-hour work weeks or credit card debt or, even just having money be our master, part of me longs for that, longs for a simpler existence. I know that it totally goes without understanding of what the implications of that means, which is like a very long version of the movie The Purge.
Or it just looks like my life where I ignore it all.
I mean, I think we should build a bunker.
I'm kind of surprised we haven't.
Yeah, I'm surprised JC hasn't. I got to get him on that.
I can see a doomsday prepper inside us both.
Yeah. And I mean, I definitely saw the beginnings of prepper life at the beginning of COVID.
It is pretty crazy that was something we were able to witness in our lifetime.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Yeah.
I know. And I think that there's part
of the global pandemic.
I mean,
the absolute halt to the world for 6 months at least.
Well, years, but really, the first 6 months were when it really felt like, life as we knew it was completely different and upended. Mm-hmm. And I think I like that. I like the opportunity to shift things entirely and to change them up. Because I get that feeling that I think a lot of people do when you're trapped in a sort of a Groundhog Day,
Right. That mundane.
Yeah, the mundane. So for me, and I know it's a weird place to get it, but the news is sort of like a weird form of fantasy fulfillment.
Well, there you have it.
So question 6 was, what do you get out of avoiding the news? Do you ever wonder what is happening, or is it pure bliss just to decide not to consume it? And I mean, I didn't even bother answering this question because clearly, I don't avoid it, but I am so fascinated by your answer here.
Yeah, so this is the ignorance is bliss argument, I guess. So there is a real tendency and desire to give myself a pass from having an opinion. Honestly, it is a bit of a cop-out and maybe the last bastion of escapism for me to indulge in. Because remaining at arm's length from historical and current events means I don't feel the need to contribute my own thoughts and moreover, be judged because of them. I am innately a mediator. I spend a lot of mental energy weighing both sides of any argument, and I can easily see both perspectives on most subjects. So I do find it really difficult to determine where I land on most topics. So like when I read your comments about the chaos of U.S. politics breaking up families, I mean, I get how easily that can happen. And it's easy for me to see why there's such a divide, like why people feel so disenfranchised. So regardless of political leaning or ideology, I'd be pretty pissed that a party who wants my vote decides that insulting my intelligence is a good way to get me to listen to them. So yeah, I guess I feel like we've learned in recent years that it can be dangerous to have an opinion. And I guess, like being scared of most things, that's one thing I'm kind of scared about is putting myself out there and really being open to the judgment that opinion can have.
It's scary. I mean, there's no question. People are more liable to jump down your throat and, outmaneuver you by saying, well, did you know about this? Did you know about that? And then you can start to backpedal, and it's not a comfortable feeling,
Well, no, I really... But that being said, I mean, I have a great deal of respect for people who have conviction about the things that they feel strongly about. And I wish that I could have more conviction. So I guess, at the end of the day, that's really what it is. I care far too much about what people think of me, and I fear their disapproval of what may be my own unpopular opinions, especially when I am keenly aware that many of those opinions may be misinformed, blatantly ignorant, or not thought through at all. It's like this verbal diarrhea as I try to make sense of things, and I worry that it can and likely will be held against me, despite the fact that my intentions are often just to better understand a situation.
Right. And there's no platform for that anymore. It's like everybody has to be an expert, or else you have to say nothing. And that is not how people learn how to engage with an issue.
Yeah. So I don't know how we get beyond that, or if that pendulum is going to swing back again. But you've probably noticed I really struggle to choose a camp. In something as simple as, you will never see, like in my online presence, for example, you will never see me change my profile picture based on a current social issue. Or you'll never see me share articles or news stories that are even remotely controversial. I just stay completely at arm's length. Mm-hmm. Now, part of that is, I guess, I do like to keep people guessing. What does she think about that?
Yeah.
And secondly, I like to be open to people sharing their opinion with me, regardless of what it may be. So I sometimes feel if I don't take a strong stance on a subject, then people are a little bit more forthcoming with their own opinions to me. And I enjoy that.
Yeah. So you're sort of being the change that you wish to see in the world, which is that you give people a soft place to land for their own opinions.
That sounds like a really kind way to put insecurity, but sure. Oh yeah, it's the same reason I don't have any tattoos. I can't commit to anything.
I mean, I have one tattoo, but I was really drunk when I got it.
Do I know about that tattoo?
You don't know about my tramp stamp? We've been on vacation together.
Sober at that.
It's pretty low down.
Okay. I'm sure I do.
That's a topic for a different podcast.
I think so. So yeah, I mean that's it for me. That's what I get out of not consuming the news. I get a pass.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that a lot of people, you're right, probably agree with that. Number one, you preserve your mental health, and number two, you don't piss a lot of people off. It used to be that there was, a lot of encouragement for discourse and for people to engage with issues. But because people have, in the era of identity politics, attached who they are to what political beliefs that they have, if a politician maybe is taking away a certain right for a certain group of people, you can't like anything else that they do, or else you're going against that special interest group or special group of people. And I think that's where we're at right now, is it's become so vitriolic in the public discourse that people are terrified to even want to vote for somebody that might represent what they want to see changed in the world. And they might not care about a certain issue that is really important to somebody else. And I think, for example, a lot of people aren't angry about it, but it's just that those same people realized that they could vote for Trump and that they could actually vote for down ballot decisions on having those rights maintained or overturned, the bans on or whatever, at the same time. So there's more nuance to it than I think people allow themselves to believe sometimes, or that the media allows us to believe. They want it to be black and white because it's an easier narrative to tell. But often things are a lot more nuanced than that and murkier than that.
Question number 7. How did growing up in a peaceful time leave us unprepared for the chaos of the present moment?
I mean, for me, I think when growing up, I really glamorized the 60s. I watched so many movies and listened to the music and dreamed of being there, you know, in the summer of love, in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco, being Janis Joplin.
Right.
I loved the idea of mass mobilization, protests against the man, quote unquote. You know, and back then they seemed to be fighting the man on all fronts: civil rights, anti-war, women's rights, counterculture. I dreamed of being part of a movement like that. In the 90s, it felt like there was like a mini rise in that sentiment, but it didn't rival what the 60s was all about. I felt like the 60s was peace and love, free love, Woodstock. People cast off society's expectations of them. They said, damn the man. I had friends in the 90s that were hippies. They were tree planters. That was a big thing back then. You know, I had friends that were logging protesters, people that used to chain themselves to bridges, people with strong, principled views that were skeptical of many of the societal trappings of that time. But to me, it always felt like they were clinging to a lost time, you know?
Yeah, like it was like a watered down version of the 60s, right?
Yeah, like 90s hippies, they looked like 60s hippies, but it was kind of like cowboys today. And I guess part of it too is that I assumed that the work that had been done in the 60s to fight for our rights had given the world a somewhat firm foothold with which to continue to evolve those big wins of the 60s into more rights for more people working towards, you know, globalization, you know, the end of nation states, gay rights, end of racism. I always thought about that famous quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And honestly, I felt back then like we were post-history. And I think a lot of people did. I remember learning that term in my history class in grade 10, and that things were just going to evolve into a more peaceful and copacetic sort of relationships between international trade, and certain nations were sort of growing towards becoming more industrialized. And, you know, I also admit to being sheltered in my safe first world country, Canada. Canada, of course, as everybody knows, espouses the values of politeness, welcoming immigrants, working towards peacekeeping, soft power geopolitically. You know, it's like you didn't really need to care about what was happening in the world if you didn't feel like it, because things were okay. And, you know, I admit to feeling a little guilty that I yearned for a more exciting time. I don't think anyone listening to this is going to be remotely surprised by that, but careful what you wish for.
Right.
What I experience now as the world marches every day towards cascading darkness and future doom is actually still complete and utter shock. I still am shocked, even though I'm also delighted.
But you don't have that same teenage invincibility anymore either, right? So you do look at it a little differently maybe than you did then.
Well, yes and no. I still feel like I'm unprepared because I have a hard time of really accepting what's happening. I'm worried I'm not alone in this, and that this is a problem, especially for people that live like in Canada who have never experienced anything in terms of a violent conflict.
Right.
We really have just watched these things on television. We have no real understanding of what it's like to lose our home or, you know, so yeah, I definitely feel that we are distracted by the very thing that is also kind of being hidden from us at the same time. Keep warm and cozy up there in Canada. Keep consuming. Keep, you know, feeding into capitalism. And by politicizing every conflict, or what we refer to as flooding the zone, which is a well-known Trump strategy of just shitstorming all these different things into the news so that you sort of lose any importance or the ability to hang on to any one thing. And we know now that the news cycle is so incredibly fast that even though there are insane things happening every day, like, remember when Trump got shot in the head?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in the news for 72 hours. And then we kind of moved on. Like, that's insane.
That is insane.
Yeah. I think that it's almost like there's so much information that we don't really know how to hang on to any of it. And, I know I keep going back to this, but there are aliens now, Anna. Aliens.
So you say.
There's they disclosed that there are aliens living in our oceans. And more recently, there has been thousands of UAP sightings, not just in the US, but in Canada, in South America, in the UK, in Kazakhstan, in India, in Japan, like all over the goddamn world. There's even a theory that the aliens are leaving, which is absolutely terrifying. Like, I don't want the aliens to be here, but I also don't want our world to be so fucked up that the aliens are leaving. I am offended and also scared of what that means, seeing as that they probably can tell the future. Anyways, nobody seems to care. Nobody cares.
I might be one of those people, but I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
It's insane to me that the world just kind of shrugs their collective shoulders and keeps going, like keeps getting up every day and going back to work and going to get a fucking latte, when the aliens, anyways, just
the aliens.
I will calm down,
But the lack of shock really, to me, isn't that surprising because this line between fact and fiction has become so blurred that nothing surprises us. It's like we've already started down this road to this dystopian future that we read about in fiction, and we're so disenchanted that the only option to consider wild realities with is absolute blasé.
Right.
Yeah, fuck it. That can be true. Sure. Why not?
Yeah. Or the world is so fucked up anyway that you're like, you know what? Fuck it. I don't even care that there's aliens. Like, I can't pay for my groceries or put gas in my car. Like, what the hell do I care that there's aliens here?
Aliens in the water?
Maybe the aliens will help.
Did you watch Cocoon? We've been there. We've done this.
I've definitely watched Cocoon. Who hasn't watched Cocoon?
I don't know.
Those were nice aliens, right?
Oh, yeah, they were.
Yeah.
I think. Well, they were nice old people.
Well, yeah.
It was a retirement community,
didn't the
right?
old
The
people
pods were in the pool.
Didn't they go to the alien planet like later?
We're going to have to rewatch Cocoon.
We're going to have to watch Cocoon again.
In preparation for what is next with the aliens in the ocean.
I'm hopeful that these are like the Cocoon aliens, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I hijacked your question.
No,
I really did.
I mean, I think, we live in that time. It's not, we are unprepared because maybe we're all as a collective unprepared, but I think people that have lived in the geographical privilege that we have here in Canada are like mega unprepared for what is happening.
Without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt. And it's an absolute folly of our generational and geographical good fortune to appreciate that the history we learned about is really only the recent past. And I think you basically had said the same thing. We are not post-history.
Clearly not.
But we really didn't have any reason to believe that reality was anything other than what we experienced.
Right.
Right? We grew up in this time and place where it was easy to believe that all people must think the same way that I do. I really truly believed that everybody believed in world peace and human rights and equality for all, and freedom of speech and personal choice. It honestly did not dawn on me that there were places in the world, including within my own country or maybe even community, where someone's sex, skin color, choice of who they love or what to believe in were wrong enough to make you a second-class citizen, or far, far worse than that. It could get you killed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. When I try to comprehend my own understanding of freedom, whether that's religious or otherwise. I do want to believe that we should all have the freedom to believe as we choose about the origins and meaning of life, what happens when we die, or any of those other big questions. But we've had the luxury to think about those things growing up where we do, right?
Right.
And I don't know, what happens when what you believe demands the act of hatred or dismantling of groups or people that don't subscribe to the same tenets? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. How on earth is our species going to make it, especially with the aliens leaving?
I mean, if they're leaving, we should
they're leaving.
Yeah.
We're just, and because we're so diametrically opposed to each other in so many fundamental ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, we've had the freedom to choose our religion or to not have a religion at all. We've had the ability to choose our career.
Mm-hmm.
These are freedoms that, women especially don't have the freedom in many parts of the world. And I definitely take that for granted.
Absolutely.
And I shouldn't. We're very lucky to live in this time. And so for people like us, it is a little bit jarring when you encounter major events in the world that are going to be destabilizing for everybody, and how to sort of wrap your brain around it, because we don't really have a survival instinct anymore.
Well, no. And I think where we grew up and how we grew up has made us exponentially predisposed to frivolity.
Mm-hmm.
We're making a podcast, not waiting for a bomb to drop on the house. Right. Like,
yes.
I love levity. Thank you for that. I mean,
yes,
God, we
Anna.
live in a reality where arguably unhinged science fiction authors can create an entire fucking belief system, Shannon.
Yes,
right?
They sure can.
Yeah. Oh, your family doesn't support your new religion? Well, that's because they're a suppressive person. And they just must be exorcised from your life.
That's right. Never talk to them again.
La la la, believe
La, la,
what
la.
you like. As long as you're not hurting anyone. But who gets to define hurt? And does it matter who's getting hurt? And how that freedom or requirement to believe impacts this collective progression or destruction. We have too many choices.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? That's what I hate about certainty. I think anybody's belief system should not involve hurting or suppressing other people.
Right.
And it also should be open to allowing everybody to have their own. If anybody says, like, if you don't believe what I believe, then you're going to be damned or go to hell,
Mm-hmm.
instantly they are canceled. I can cancel them.
You can cancel them.
Yeah. I hate canceling, but I will cancel them.
Well, I don't know about you, but going through this process of actually answering these questions kind of has made me question my own reluctance to engage with this actual reality of how complicated and terrible life can be for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'm necessarily apologetic enough about that, but I'm definitely more aware by giving it time and energy to think about it than I was before we started this process, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how useful guilt is or feeling ashamed of something that you really can't change, but awareness is something that we can choose, and we can keep choosing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is a way to honor other people's experiences as well, is to hold space for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this is our reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And we just make this shit up as we go.
Right.
So our question 8 is really continuing in the same vein as we were talking about in question 7, which is, what is your relationship to war and to peace?
Yeah, you're right. It is sort of like a segue, I guess. My relationship to war and peace. So when we started learning about the Gulf War in current events class back in the 90s, I remember thinking, well, this just can't be right. Like, I thought that they should have called World War II the last World War, because surely all humans have realized that organized and systematic killing of each other en masse is insanity. Surely we understand that war is not the answer, despite the fact that we've been warring forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I remember that being a little...
Lest we forget.
So now, 30 years later, here we are, poised to see the onset of World War III in our lifetime, for Pete's sake. I mean, evidently war must be the only answer. And evidently, if we do it in the name of protecting our own interests, then, well, it just must be justified too, right?
Must be.
Must be. I mean, if not armed conflict, how else do you stop the bad guys? And what happens when the good guy is the bad guy in somebody else's story? I mean, it was confusing then, and it's confusing now. I actually remember as teenagers, myself and a group of friends chose to protest war by not standing up during a Remembrance Day service in our high school. I don't think I've ever told anybody that.
Ballsy, Anna.
Yeah, it was. And I remember feeling like it was the right thing to do, to take a stand by not standing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, except we were reprimanded after for our disrespect of veterans, and rightly so, you know. But both then and now, it's hard to know what you're fighting for and against. And in our desire to do the right thing or support the right thing, there's always going to be another side of the story worth hearing. And what do you do if not fight? So I don't know.
Well, and I think, you know, that's an interesting point is, yes, that action might have been disrespectful towards veterans, but that's not what you were protesting.
No.
It's the people behind the wars, the people that are in the secret war room somewhere making the big decisions. That's what we're protesting. And often, if you're against war, that's what gets thrown in your face.
Yeah.
Oh, well, how could you disrespect them? Well, I'm not saying shit about what they're doing. No.
So what about you? What's your relationship to War and Peace, do you think?
Well, I mean, if we don't think that things could get that bad, I think we're living in denial. So I don't live in denial. So my relationship is, you know, although like we were talking about, I feel completely unprepared and have never experienced anything that holds a candle to an armed conflict close up. I'm still ambivalent about the end of the world. And I think maybe it's because I think we're going in the wrong direction. I think a lot of people think that, but I can only speak for myself. And I feel that eventually you need to reap what you sow. And, you know, even if I'm not able to think about that in a way where I've actually experienced what that means in real time, in real life, I definitely think that is a problem. But again, I am confronting, you know, what happens if the U.S. becomes a fascist state in 2025? What happens if that's the last U.S. election, right? What if AI robots take over the world or just take all our jobs? What if the Russians drop a bomb? The climate crisis? I mean, shit. The climate crisis is probably the most real thing that we are all as a collective facing. And I mean, I would be amiss not to bring up the aliens.
How did I know? How did I know we were going to circle back on the aliens? Did you hear they're leaving?
I think they're leaving, Anna. I can't conceive of these things because I have lived my entire life with both political and socioeconomic stability. And so definitely this exercise has made me more aware than ever of my privilege. Yeah. You know, and as an avid news watcher, it's funny because it doesn't often occur to me to think about my own privilege or safety when consuming the news. I don't think, God, I'm fucking lucky every time I see some news story about Ukraine or you know, the people in Gaza. That should probably be my first thought. I'm also not a person, to be honest, that spends time feeling guilty about my privilege or resentful about it being pointed out, you know? Point it out. Go ahead. You're right. That's not me being defensive. I really am a privileged person, you know, and I've lived in relative peace and stability my entire life. Geography is a lottery that we win or lose at birth.
And there's not much you can do about that perspective.
No, it's a fixed
it's
variable.
The one that we have.
Yep.
Yeah.
And my feeling one way or the other about it doesn't change what it means. I work in immigration, and so I know firsthand what it is to be born in a country where in order to become prosperous and support your family, you actually need to leave and to go to a new country. And a lot of people come to our country for that very reason. I think it's a beautiful thing. So awareness is not a skill that is, you know, given it is a skill that is developed, and watching the news and as much information and knowledge as they throw at us does not develop this awareness. We watch the news in 2D and we live in 3D. So we can't feel the feelings or experience the pain or the suffering of what we're watching. So we can only understand it from a remote vantage point. And I think of it as information. And I am at a distance from it when I am consuming it. I am looking at it in terms of the information and the context and what it means, but I'm not thinking about it in the terms of the humans that are impacted.
Right.
And that remoteness and the amount of information that comes at us at all times is what produces a sort of a shield for what should trigger a response of things that should be offensive to our humanity, but don't. We don't. We don't think about what we're watching enough, or I don't, as to what it really means for a person. And I think that in this way, we tend in our society to march towards a more and more dangerous time because we're not confronting that aspect of it.
Well, I know for me, I think the only thing that has really helped to change my perspective, or I shouldn't say change my perspective, it's not that, but it shed a different light on that perspective, is travel. And, when you see how other people live.
Right.
We travel to a beautiful sunny destination and are afforded that luxury. And then it doesn't take long to see how people really live there.
Right. Yeah. I've found it very interesting, the travels that I've done in my life when I encounter real poverty.
Yeah.
And people that have only like 3 T-shirts, and live in a very small house and don't have power or running water or, that I can't conceive of those things, but that's the reality for most people that live on this planet.
And yet we can still separate ourselves easily enough to still go on vacation.
Yep, we can.
I'm not sure what that says about us.
Well, and I think the world itself is geared towards shielding us from it. I think we are using the news media in modern times as a tool of propaganda to point people towards things that we want them to focus on and point them away from things that they don't want us focusing on. And I had the thought today, because it's my favorite thing to talk about, is that
aliens?
Yeah, of course, it's aliens.
Oh, I was joking.
I love it so much. Anyways, so I find it interesting timing that the alien invasion is happening at the very same time that the guy that assassinated the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Johnson, is being touted as a class hero, right? And people aren't mad. I mean, he's easy on the eyes. There's no question.
I'm mad. I find it ridiculous.
Text for days.
I get it.
Look at that
Jesus,
smile.
It pisses me off. Anybody else kills anybody else and we're up in arms. But this guy,
I mean,
that kills that guy.
But I mean, if you look into United Healthcare.
Oh, no, I get it. I mean,
how many people have they killed, right?
I get it.
So it's kind of like systematic legal killing of people and illegal assassination, murder of people. Those two things have been held up in our society as being very, very different things.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about vigilante justice, right?
Correct.
It's the same question.
But it's like now we're saying, are they that different? And if they're not that different, then that is something that could potentially spark a revolution. And that is something that the powers that be would be very, very, very worried about. And so maybe that's why the aliens are here.
Right. Full circle aliens.
If we can distract people with an alien invasion, then they won't start the revolution. Just saying. That's a conspiracy theory. I just made that up. But that's a conspiracy theory that I can get behind.
So these aliens live in the water. They have gills? Is this what you're telling me?
I mean, they might have gills. They could just be like, I feel like they look kind of like hairless cats.
Well, I sure hope they do.
Me too. Me too.
Well, I don't know what rabbit hole we went down on that question, but evidently our relationship to war and peace is pretty tenuous at best. All right. So, Shannon, our next question. What is your feeling about the impending doom of our time? How do you think about it?
I think it might be surprising based on some of the things that I have said previously, but I'm actually not a citizen of the United States. I am a Canadian. And U.S. politics is not my politics, but it is the only politics I'm particularly interested in because theirs is the greatest show on earth. The biggest personalities, the craziest elections, most surprising twists and turns. I mean, who saw Trump winning, really? I mean, what happens in the U.S. affects all of us. They are the most powerful country in the world militarily, and I would still say the center of the world's cultural zeitgeist for now. I mean, we live in a precarious time, Anna.
More and more every day.
U.S. foreign policy seems to be becoming a game of whack-a-mole where slightly less powerful nations thirsty to thwart American hegemony have spent decades strategizing in the dark, particularly power players like Russia and China. They are emerging now, creating financial alliances vis-a-vis, the BRIC nations, reordering the nations of the world under their orbit. And it's kind of like we're living... It seems like right now we are living in 1938. But instead of being on the right side of history, we are the unwitting Germans marching towards fascism. We talk a lot about our relationship with news, but it's also important to talk about that relationship and how it has become more and more scarily similar to propaganda. In Canada, we have, for now, Justin Trudeau, a woke Nepo baby whose only interest, at least in the run-up to when I was writing for this episode, was seeming to be staying prime minister as long as humanly possible. Since recording started, he has finally stepped down, just in time to completely gridlock our government, while the Americans, in an almost unprecedented fashion, and by Americans, I mean Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Who's not yet the president. We are today, January the 11th. January the 12th. Mm-hmm. We are 1 week away from Trump being sworn in. But he is threatening to absorb Canada as the 51st state. He's threatening us with 25% tariffs. He's obviously not only threatening Canada, but Greenland and Panama at the same time. So by saying we live in a precarious time, I really mean it. It feels like more than it has for decades that we as a globe are in real danger of getting ourselves into a third world war. So it makes me think about Canada and how we played a significant role in the First and the Second World Wars.
Right.
Without Canada and Canada's soldiers, World War I and II might never have been won. We live in a country where we sacrificed for the world the West created. Democracy, human rights, freedom from tyranny. We sent a lot of our young men to die in those wars for those values and to make sure that those values, became reality in this world. And now we live in a country where people can't afford food, housing, are fed a steady diet of propaganda and identity politics on state-run media. And we think we're different from the U.S. and Canada. In fact, a lot of us pride ourselves that we are completely different culturally than they are. But I don't think we're as different as we'd like to believe.
I don't think so either.
People are angry. People are angry, and that's why Trump got elected. That's why Trudeau had to step down. Mm-hmm. We're tired of being told that they're doing something about the way that the system has failed us, but they either can't or more likely they won't because of what it would cost them.
Yep.
So when I think about the future, honestly, I see us cascading over a cliff. I see mass movements of people needing to leave uninhabitable regions for reasons of either fires. We look at what's happened this week in Los Angeles, droughts, floods, hurricanes. I see people struggling for resources that we take for granted in the present day, like clean water, power, even the internet. I see this as a means to an end, to get to a society that makes more sense. To me, it seems like we are firing on way too many cylinders, and this engine has to overheat at some point. It's overheating. It can't sustain this level. You hear people talking about how they feel like something is about to happen. Now, that could be, if you, like myself, are from the nation we call TikTok, the world is always ending. Every day it is ending.
We've been on that precipice for a while.
But there is also real points of evidence that suggests that, and climate change being, I think, the number one factor here, but political instability, I think, at a very close second of making people feel like, even weirdly enough, if I might digress for a second,
mm-hmm.
Last night I stayed up late and I watched a movie that's not that old called World War Z. Yeah, so World War Z is it's based on a book, and it's basically about a zombie apocalypse. But it sort of takes it to the zombies are it's as a result of a virus, and it's a guy that works for the UN, and he is going to various nations trying to investigate the source to try to find a vaccine. So it's a zombie apocalypse movie, but not kind of like the sort of more exaggerated, like popcorn movie, zombie apocalypse movie. It's more of a realistic take. And you would think if something like that happened, that's what we do. It is sort of acted like a pandemic movie kind of melded with a zombie movie. But anyways, it was interesting because there were countries in that movie that were working together. That movie might have been in 2010, 2012. Those countries wouldn't be able to work together today.
Is that the same movie where the safe zone at the end of the movie is in our neck of the woods?
Digby Neck?
Is it Digby Neck?
Yeah. It's called the Freeport Safety Zone at the very end of the movie.
For those listening, we can reach that by water in about 25 minutes.
Yeah, it's 14 kilometers from here. Which, when I first watched that, I was like, oh, I feel so much safer living in Nova Scotia. But I feel like if the shit really hit the fan, the real hot piece of real estate in this world would be New Zealand.
Fair point.
Middle Earth. Anyways. So I'm heavily influenced. I've always been influenced by the philosophy of William Godwin, who is considered widely to be the grandfather of anarchy. He envisioned a world of small, autonomous, agrarian communities where people did not organize themselves by a hierarchical structure of government, but where property was communal, resources were shared, and that an emphasis on reason and education and the principles of cooperation and mutual aid would make these little communities run just fine. I see this as being sort of a utopia of the future. This is probably what I liked so much about what I learned about the 60s. There were movements in the 60s that tried to mirror this when we hear about communes, right? And communal living, intentional living. Even today, there are lots of intentional communities where people share the responsibilities of childcare. They share living space. They share expenses to make raising families make more sense in today's modern economy where individual families find it a real struggle and are not supported in a way that they should. So I know that likely I won't see this in my lifetime, but I've always felt that this was going to be the end goal of all the craziness that we're about to endure. A sort of a great reset. The scary part is what happens on the road to utopia. Because utopia, there's always a shadow of utopia. There's no such thing as the perfect world. So as we have seen in many communes, they often devolve into cults. They're problematic sexually. They even make the children who live there more vulnerable to abuse. I read a short story in college called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I haven't actually. When I was reading your writing, I was intrigued by it though, so I might have to look into it.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. So I think her name was Ursula Le Guin that wrote it, and it's a story about a utopian society that harbors a secret that the total bliss and happiness of everyone living there is entirely dependent on the torturing of one poor child left isolated in a closet and hidden away from sight. And the word omelas, spelled backwards, is Salem O. So I don't know if that sort of suggests once the secret is revealed and people must choose to either walk away from the place, not being able to reconcile that their joy is at the cost of the suffering of a child, or choose to stay, feeling gratitude for the child's sacrifice and resolving to make it worth it. I mean, so maybe watching the impending doom of the world as spectators is not the right way to approach the chaos of our time. I say that facetiously but also with an admitted level of humility. Maybe we have more agency than we think, but we remain complacent because the alternative costs us too much. Just like the politicians that we have so much contempt for, or I have so much contempt for, apparently.
You're not alone. So.
Or maybe we've already decided to stay in Omelas long ago and now placate ourselves with the idea that there is no way out.
This is why the idea of utopia scares me.
Mm-hmm.
Too good to be true.
Too good to be true.
Yeah.
And if it's too good to be true, then we don't trust it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. How about you? How do you think about the impending doom of our time?
Well, in a sense, I feel like it's not even impending.
It's here.
It's here. It's here. It's like we've been hijacked already. And I kind of think the impending doom of our time relates or refers to this sort of fear and disassociation that we all walk around carrying.
Mm-hmm.
However, I also feel a bit like a supporting character in my own life, like this voyeur who, no matter what happens, is just going to remain, an unscathed spectator.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's probably going to happen. But
I hope it does.
I do too. But I feel torn. I think part of me just thinks that the world and society is going to continue on in the same vein that it has for eons, with this ebb and flow of war and famine and progress and disaster and up and down and back and forth. But you know what? We're going to come out okay in the end. That's what I like to think. But on the flip side, I'm also pretty cognizant of the fact that we're heading down a rather dark path towards what could potentially end civilizations. We've had 75 years under our belt with the threat of nuclear war. That's something generations in the past never had to contend with. I mean, mind you, human fragility is no joke. There's been plenty of terrible things that have happened over the years that we've managed to get through. But who's to say that we will get through what's coming our way?
Right.
Whether that's, the dissolution of society or plague or famine or war or, heaven forbid, something that just wipes us all out.
Right.
And I don't even think so much about what might happen to me, but I think a whole lot about what might happen to the people that I love. And I I wonder how far you would go to protect them if you were ever in that kind of scenario, sort of this Lord of the Flies kind of, I'd like to think that I would be, like Piggy trying to maintain the status quo.
I feel like you would.
Maybe. I don't know if I've got the moral fortitude to keep it up.
I feel like you would toe the line.
I don't know. Maybe not, though. If everybody around me is devolving into madness and savagery, like, I don't know if I would.
I worry sometimes if you're watching a disaster movie and somebody like stays behind to like grab the hand of that person, like so that that last person doesn't, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, I probably wouldn't have done that. I probably would have kept going.
I probably would have just, No, I would have been that girl.
Self-preservation, baby.
I don't know. I'd be that girl like running up the stairs in the slasher movie, like towards a certain death. Just, why are you doing that? You're so stupid.
Don't go down there.
But I think that's what scares me. It really scares me is thinking about how far you'd be willing to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would I kill somebody?
Right.
Would I?
Yeah.
I don't know. God, I hope not.
To protect someone you love?
Right?
Right.
So those are the things that kind of get inside my head. And you think about what happens when those moments of madness sort of happen. And so when I think about my loved ones or myself and you're walking down a street or you're on an airplane or you're in a crowd of people, and then all of a sudden it kind of triggers those memories of things you see in the news, right? So whether it's that shooter from the hotel at that Las Vegas festival, or an army vet who plows down a bunch of revelers on New Year's Eve in New Orleans. You think about those things. And so I guess that's what I mean when I talk about the impending doom is here. Like, we're already living it. We're already thinking about it all the time.
Right.
And maybe it's always been that way. I don't know. But that's kind of how I think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wrong place, wrong time.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, wrong place, wrong time. I mean, I'm sure the past wasn't any more fun. I don't know how well I would have fared back in the days, before we managed to figure out how to harness fire or something. I mean, me against a predator. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the first 100,000 years of human history was probably god awful. Like, thank God we weren't born back then.
Oh, can you imagine?
Living in caves.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But yeah. Apocalyptic possibilities abound, Shannon.
They sure do, Anna. In 2025, you bet your ass they do.
And I make light of things because that's how I cope, right? I mean, that's it. So you've probably heard us throughout this podcast giving the odd guffaw or chuckle over something that really isn't funny.
Right.
But that's the reality of how we cope with things.
Yeah.
That's it.
Sometimes it's the only way.
Sometimes it is. On the next episode of The Assignment, News Addiction or Aversion, we discuss living through some of the biggest news stories of our generation.